Okay, guys, we're going to get started. How was lunch? Yeah, that fettuccine Alfredo, right? Yeah, it's all good in the veggies, so good. Remember, at the next break in an hour, we will have desserts out. Yeah, so that's good. Something fun to look forward to besides our amazing next speaker. Our next speaker, of course, is Trish McMillan. I'm going to read a little bio here for you. This is Dogs Helping Dogs, transforming the rehabilitation of at-risk dogs in shelters and homes. And Trish holds a master's degree in animal behavior and is a certified professional dog trainer with decades of experience in sheltering and rescue, including leadership roles at the ASPCA. Amazing. She specializes in behavior and rehabilitation for dogs from complex situations. We know what that's like. Trish is an author, speaker, and consultant known worldwide. We're lucky to have her as well. Please welcome Trish McMillan.
All right, thank you for everybody who went to my last talk. This will be a lot more fun. This is on helping the ones we can help. So there's some of my helpful dogs. Some are, they're all real in that picture. Sometimes I put up the one with a stuffed dog. So we're going to talk a little bit about meeting the needs of the dogs in our care. That's one of the things we really have to do in shelters and in rescues. We'll talk a little bit about what is social facilitation, what is co-regulation, how can we use those in helping dogs with behavior problems. And then I kind of go through what problems I think other dogs can and can't help with, how to use live dogs to help you with behavior problems, and when a stuffed dog might be a good screening tool. So I have a farm in North Carolina with, God, I'm down to 30-something animals of 5 species, and every single one of them has somebody who speaks their language. I do not have a single chicken. I have 24 chickens. I do not have a single horse. I have 3 horses. And I think this is really important to social animals. My tenant had a snake, and it was not a social snake, and it was fine to have just one. But when you've got a social species, it's really good to have somebody in the house who speaks your language. And I think that's really the power of dogs helping dogs. So there's a few of my species. Got cats and goats too. And everybody's got a friend. If they want a friend, they've got a friend. And I think one of the most powerful things that dogs do for us is they don't lie to other dogs. Do people lie to dogs? Do we say, hey, get over here, time for a nail trim. Hey, get in the car, we're going to the vet. We say, come on over here, you're going to have a bath. But if the dog, I think this is the real power, is the dogs won't lie to one another. I have 2 very fearful dogs and 3 very friendly dogs. And the fearful ones really look to the friendlies to decide who is safe. If Poppy the Pyrenees says, this is my favorite person, Laurel the shy little black dog is more likely to come up to say hi to them. So this is Coco the Bouvier, who was one of my pandemic board and trains. And I couldn't touch her for the whole first visit. She spent 4 hours at my place with her harness on upside down, and I could not get near her to fix it. But she kept coming back, and my dogs helped her. And we gradually went more places. It was hard during the pandemic, but she became a relatively normal dog. I think if she had grown up alone in a home with people coming in and scaring her, she very likely would have gotten worse instead of better. So social facilitation, here's the technical definition. When the performance of a behavior by an animal increases the probability of other animals engaging in that behavior, or in increasing the intensity of that behavior. So I'll show a little bit of social facilitation in a bad way at my house. So the big brown Newfie is a foster, and my dogs are teaching him when we open the gate to the barking field, we do a big lap of it and we bark. I hope his new owner likes that. So here's a human example where there is no actual danger, but watch the man's reaction when the wife is showing fear.
What? Don't scream like that. What's in there? What's in there? Huh? What's in there? What's in there? Open the door! What's in there?
Don't do that to your partner. That's very mean. But, you know, if you are on an airplane and everybody at the front starts screaming, you may start screaming without even knowing what's going on. And also, if you are in a place like this and everybody seems very chill and relaxed, you're more likely to match the mood of the room. So there's Poppy the Pyrenees mix and her. She is the emotional support for my pretty much feral dog, Laurel, who I still can't even get on a leash. And the way this works is through co-regulation. So it's a psychology term, mutual adaptations between partners in response to one another's biology and behavior. So an example might be a parent and a child. If you are taking your child to a birthday party and you are being friendly and social with people, your child is more likely to pick up on that. If you are, like me, a little awkward in social situations and you're the parent sitting in the corner trying to avoid eye contact, the kid may pick up on that as well. We may co-regulate in a romantic relationship. We definitely co-regulate with our friends. And I do think that dogs can co-regulate with humans. I had a friend who was very anxious, and she got herself a very anxious dog, and it was a tricky situation to manage because they were not co-regulating each other. And when that dog died, I got her a really nice calm dog, and it was a better match. So Poppy is the fluffy co-regulator of my house. She's a Pyrenees that was dumped, mostly Pyrenees that was dumped on my neighbor's property. And she's just a natural therapy dog. Like whoever's around her, human, dog, they just catch her vibe. And all of my dogs look to her. If a new person comes in, they're like, what does Poppy think of this person? And she loves everybody. So there's a foster dog at the coffee shop, actually falling asleep beside Poppy because Poppy says this is a safe place to be. So I think a lot of this is done through oxytocin. We can, that is the love hormone. That is what mother animals feel with their child. The oxytocin helps them with the bond. So it is involved in social bondings. It's involved in parental bonding. When I have puppies in the house, I definitely get the oxytocin rush. You feel very protective towards them. And it is a mediator of stress. So if the dogs get to play, there is more oxytocin circulating. And I think this is the mechanism that helps us rehabilitate our shelter dogs, our foster dogs, our clients' dogs if you're a trainer, through using play, through using social facilitation. So this is a little shy puppy that came to me for training, the one on the left. And here she is at the vet's learning to sit on the scale because my pit bull Theodore, who loves everybody and everything, said it was safe. She's like, okay, this is fine. She came to me as a puppy. She is Kaiken, which is a naturally suspicious kind of primitive Asian breed. First and only one I've ever met. But I'm glad she came to me to learn how to dog from my dogs because she was very, very dog social. I have never had trouble house training a foster puppy. I send everybody out to the yard. Puppy goes out to the yard. Clearly, this is where we pee. They are house trained like that. I feel terrible for my niece and nephew took in a puppy and had a terrible time trying to house train this dog in an apartment where they had to go down an elevator, and there were no other dogs to help. Like, gotta have a whole crowd of them, like your crazy aunt. Fear of other dogs, fear of people. They will often take their cues from another dog before they'll take their cues from a human. We can say, it's okay, all we want. But if Poppy the Pyrenees says, hey, these guys are awesome, they will listen to her before they'll listen to me. A lot of the environmental fears, I never go to the vet with just one dog. I have 5 dogs. And if somebody has to go to the vet for a visit, I will take an accessory dog along so that half the time you are not getting poked or prodded. And you have a buddy there with you, and everybody feels better. I think some reactivity can be helpful if you've got a dog. Poppy the Pyrenees has never barked at another dog ever on walks. If I'm out with a foster and the foster's like, rah, 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 she just looks at them like, are you not embarrassed with yourself? We don't do that. And when I take them out in the car, nobody barks from my car. That's just not a thing we do. And they take that cue from each other. So it's not a cure for everything. There's definitely a level of dog aggression, the dogs who are the heat-seeking missiles. I see a dog, I lock in on a dog. If you drop the leash, I'm going to go and grab it and shake it and not let go. They don't need Poppy the Pyrenees. That is not something that we can fix with just throwing a dog at it. If they're a little uncertain of other dogs, if they are reactive because they don't know how to play, teaching them to play, I think, can be really helpful. Some types of aggression towards humans are not going to respond to Poppy the Pyrenees saying it's okay. Some dogs are not going to take her word for it, or the fear will be too great, or the territorial behavior. They don't care that she's not barking. They're going to go forward and bark. Handling sensitivity, veterinary care. There's other ways to approach that. Just taking them to the vet with another dog can help, but it's not going to help them learn to put a muzzle on or learn to have their nails trimmed. And barrier frustration in the shelter doesn't often go away when you do play groups, which sucks, because I wish it would. And some problems get worse, whether you throw another dog at it or not. Separation anxiety, sadly, adding another dog does not help. They want their human, and I'll show you a little video of a foster dog who was very sad about me leaving. Predatory behavior is not going to help. Territorial barking, I showed you the barking field, that will get worse with social facilitation. Some types of over-arousal, play can help with, because they're just bringing the fuel level down, but it's not the cure. Food guarding will often get worse if you have more dogs. And leash reactivity also may get worse depending on what the other dog's doing. Here you go. Watch the white Doberman. He has lots of dog friends. The one in the cone. And he would keep that up for hours, even if the other dogs were not adding to the mayhem. So I do think modern dogs have a much harder life. When I was a kid growing up in Manitoba, we all opened our door in the morning, the dogs went out, played with the kids, went on bike rides, and they'd all come home at dinner time. And they got to do what they wanted to do all day, every day. Did some of them get hit by cars? Sure. Did lots of them have unwanted puppies? Absolutely. But I also lived in New York City, and dogs had to be on leash almost all the time. And because it's so much harder to meet their needs, I was lucky enough to live near a park that had off-leash hours, so I could go out twice a day and throw the chucket and get some of their needs met. But man, if you didn't have an off-leash trained dog, everything had to be on a leash. And then you go back to your 400 square foot studio apartment with your 2 other dogs, and you're stuck there while mom's at work for the next 10 hours. Like, it's a hard life. And I think a lot of the leash reactivity I deal with as a private trainer has to do with leashes themselves. If you look at a sidewalk and we're both approaching head on, that's a very confrontational position for those dogs to be in. And they learn when you go woof, woof, the other dog goes away, it can get worse every time you walk them. So, and they spend so much time alone. Like my childhood dog in Manitoba, out partying with his dog friends and his kid friends all day, he was almost never left alone. There was almost always somebody home with him. And if he was left alone, he'd been out partying all morning, so being home for a few hours was not a big deal. So modern dogs have a hard life. Modern humans have a harder life than we used to as well. And What often happens is we avoid other dogs because you yell at other dogs, which means your social needs don't get met and you don't learn to play. And it can become a bit of a spiral for some of my clients. So it is hard to find off-leash spots to run. That's one reason I have a sniff spot on my farm, is so that my local clients who don't have dog park dogs can come and let them run at my place. So there's me and my childhood dog. He is mysteriously on a chain here. I don't know why. We were probably going somewhere. I was a cookie trainer from way back. And the dog who bit the kids riding by on the bike was taken behind the barn and shot. There was no tolerance for aggression, so the dogs who were running around were a lot easier. It's kind of similar to street dogs. I had a Puerto Rican street dog, a little Sato, for 15 years, and she had a great life out on the streets before she came to me. So yeah, are these dogs suffering? I went to Chile a few years ago to give a talk, and I was out with Mike Shikashio looking at the sights, and we heard this crazy excited barking from around the corner. We're like, that's not a normal street dog sound. So we went around the corner. This is what we saw. So sometimes when we take these dogs out of a street dog situation and put them in a condo in Toronto where they get walked on leash, we're actually making their lives worse. These guys they had a good spay-neuter program. They had a really great life, and I still wanted to take one home. So this is my dog's life now, and I think they have an idyllic life. I recognize my privilege. I recognize not everybody can do this for their dogs. But boy, oh boy, the behavior problems have gone way down since I moved to a farm with a doggy door where everybody except me gets to do what they want, when they want, all day, every day. I gotta put these things together for you guys. But the chickens have a door that opens at dawn. They go out. The horses have a run-in shed. They can be in or out all the time. I'm a big believer in fresh air and sunshine. I think this is one of the powers of doing playgroup in the shelter, is that the dogs get outside. They get sun on their fur. They get to breathe fresh air, be out in a quieter place. But choice is really big for dogs, and I think the choice of who to play with and when to play is something that keeps these guys mentally healthy, even though two of them have some pretty significant behavior problems that would make it hard to live in anyone else's house. I am constantly fostering. I do some board and train. I have friends with dogs, so they have lots of variety in their play friends if somebody comes over. I have a client with a really obnoxious adolescent lab. My little guy doesn't get to play with him anymore. He was learning some bad things. So, but they have choice about whether they want to interact or not. And I think we can mimic this in a shelter, doing field trips, doing play groups, getting dogs out into foster, and using your fosters appropriately. Two of my dogs are very fearful, and one of them was fostered in a place with no other dogs, and he did really badly there. He really needs another dog around to help him feel okay with life. And I've done more reading on confinement, on prison policies with humans than the average dog trainer, because I see so many parallels. Trying to rehabilitate a dog in a kennel is as hard as trying to rehabilitate a human in solitary confinement. And if you look at what it does to the mind of a social creature being kept in a cell, it's more than 15 days of solitary confinement is considered torture in some countries. Not this one, but maybe that should change. And when I look at our dogs, especially our not dog social dogs, we are doing this to them. I've seen dogs. I was at a shelter recently that had a dog who'd been there for 6 years in solitary confinement. And he was not normal. He definitely did not have a normal brain anymore. So the clock is ticking. One of the things I do, I teach a shelter dog behavior mentorship, and one of the things that I'm constantly harping on about is let's reduce the length of stay. The number one risk to behavioral deterioration in sheltered dogs is length of stay. So removing some of those barriers to adoption, getting answers sooner, making euthanasia calls promptly if they are clear ones, can help free up the bandwidth to help more of the dogs we can help. So I say this all the time, no social animal gets better in solitary confinement. So what can we do? This is, actually it's 10 years this month, 10 years ago that I worked with this shelter. It's probably one of the most depressing shelters I've been to. It's been torn down, they've built a whole new facility. But I was called in, I was helping with Dogs Playing for Life. They were trying to keep as many of these dogs sane as they could. And they're in these tiny little kennels, top and bottom kennels, probably built in the 60s, where it's 3 feet by 4 feet by 3 feet. And they were not even getting taken out of their kennels. They were being hosed in the kennels. And there were such big drains, you couldn't put a Kong in with them. It would stop up the drain. So what are you going to do? I'm sure none of us have a shelter like this, but even at the worst of the worst, what can we do for these dogs to give more of them a life outcome? And everything that wasn't a pit bull was pulled by rescue pretty immediately. So 100 pit bulls in these tiny little kennels. This is what helped. I took this one home with me. Yeah, that one. Getting them out and letting them play, let them show us who they really were. They were so different outside. We could figure out what kind of home they would fit into. We could figure out who was dog social. If they were dangerous, they could make the euthanasia calls appropriately rather than based on just kennel behavior, because nobody behaved great in that kennel. And you can give them enrichment. That's my after kennel. You got to see this kennel after playgroup. So we went and did playgroup. Same kennel a couple hours later. Actually hear the radio. So even with no bedding, even with no enrichment, their lives were better, and we were able to help them get more out while they were building their new shelter. So this was a case that was pretty transformational for me. This was the last dogfighting case I worked when I was with the ASPCA. And it was 367 dogs taken off chains from about 12 different locations, stored in a couple of centralized locations for 8 months in a cage. And when we first did this case, this was one of the earlier cases where dogs were worked with instead of just euthanized. We had all these protocols. So with the fearful dogs, we'll take all the bacon from the hotel breakfast and we will throw bacon at them, or we'll sit on a bucket in front of the cage and throw bacon. And if they're over aroused, we'll teach them to play tug and drop. And if they do resource guarding, this is what we'll do. And if they are, we had a protocol for everything. So they were mostly going to be worked with by volunteers. And by the end of this case, 8 months in, we had 2 groups. We had the resource guarding, rehab, and we had play group, because play helped with everything else. And our goal was to take the dogs who were, maybe most of the euthanasias were for dog aggression, and we were going to take the ones who were kind of in that middle group, who might be able to take from dog selective over to dog friendly or dog social. And I took that one home. So they were housed in 5 foot by 5 foot kennels, ricocheting off the walls. They got good enrichment, but it's still in a kennel. And I noticed when we put them outside, when we built outside kennels, everybody chilled. I'd walk through the outside area, everybody be out there in the sun. I really wish more of us would consider doing indoor-outdoor kennels and letting dogs have fresh air and sunshine. The architects want glass and echoey surfaces and indoor, and it's not what animals need. So here's my little guy, Theodore, with my female helper dog. When we finished working with the complicated dogs, we would make sure they had playtime with a happy, normal dog before they went back.
That's for a turkey, isn't it?
When I rotated in that time, my friend Amy was leaving. Dr. Amy Cook, she teaches for Fenzi Academy, and she teaches about people's playing with their dogs now. Take her courses too. She said, this dog needs to belong to a trainer. I was like, yeah, he does. So if you don't have a play yard, or if the dog is not enjoying play, taking them for a parallel walk as a group can be really helpful. How many of you have heard from a friend or relative, "Oh my God, I can't believe you go to a shelter. I could never go to a shelter. I would just want to take them all home. Oh my God." Like, yes, I am a monster because I like going to shelters. It's because my heart is hard that I can do this. But anytime I see somebody out for a hike with no dog, I'm like, let me get you into a dog. You should not be out here in the hills of North Carolina without a dog. So taking the dogs to where the people are, I watched the foster talk in here this morning. We'll hit those people who will never set foot in a shelter, but if they meet your dog, they might fall for it. So that's another way to get them around other dogs and feeling better about their lives. There's been a study done recently on pair housing shelter dogs. I used to do this when I was at the ASPCA shelter in New York City. If I had two meatball adolescents who are out there finger painting their kennels by themselves, and I put them in one of our bigger kennels, they would party in the kennel, and then they would curl up on top of one another, and the people walking by would be like, "Oh, I could picture this one at home. Look how calm they are." And in the study that was recently done in 2024, there was a lot more use of the bed, a lot of dogs stayed in close contact throughout the day, reduction in stress-related behavior. But here's the one that I love, 4-day shorter length of stay on average in dogs that were pair housed. So if you got room for it, consider it. So, I think about shelter kennels as being like a Skinner box for reactivity. If you want to produce a dog who yells at things, put them in a kennel and walk things by them every day. And they will learn to yell because they think that's what's making the dog or the human or the broom move away. So if you want to create reactivity, put a dog in a kennel. The antidote is getting them out and letting them have positive contact with the people, with the dogs. And we always have dogs. A lot of people are like, "Oh, all my dogs are dog selective or dog reactive." I promise you, some of the dogs who are the worst with other dogs on leash are just doing this because they're frustrated and they want to play. And some of them will be your helper dogs. And you will always have, they get adopted fast, but you will always have more coming in. And some of your loudest dogs will be your best players. It also lets us see dogs at their best. You put that picture of the dog up on your website instead of the intake mugshot. People can picture that dog in their home. And it's the most fun your volunteers can have. It's the most fun your shelter workers can have. When I do volunteer in shelters around me, this is the only thing I do anymore as I go and I help with dog play. I have assessed thousands of dogs in dark back rooms with my rubber hand and poked them and did all the bad things. That's all we knew how to do 15, 20 years ago. And most of us have thrown that by the wayside. If you're still doing it, come take my mentorship. I will give you some other things to do. I feel like now if I take a dog out of a kennel, walk them past some more people, put them in play groups, see how they interact with the dogs and the people there, I feel like I know that dog better than I ever did poking them with a rubber hand. And I know them in a positive way. I know them in a way that I can market them to others. And it's just magic, just watching these fearful dogs transform when they get out with conspecifics. The other thing is, if they are dangerous, we need to find that out. If we are not doing a dog test, that dog test is going to happen at Thanksgiving when Aunt Betty shows up with her Pomeranian and sets it down in the middle of the dining room floor with your new shelter dog. That's not a good Thanksgiving if you guys guessed wrong. So it's our job. We need to find this out. So a couple little tips. People are very nervous to let dogs play. You shouldn't be. Most of them will play beautifully. Use a muzzle if you need to. And if you think, okay, this dog who's humping looks like he's tormenting the dog on the bottom, if it's making you uncomfortable, you can always do a consent test. You can take the leash, take the aggressor away, and see what the victim does. So if the victim's like, "Oh, come back, I was having a good time." Okay, that looks stupid, but clearly you were both okay with it. And if the victim sort of shakes off and goes, "Oh, thank you for removing them," then you were correct. You can do a consent test as often as you need to. So this little pitty in the muzzle is a dog I met in Australia. He was part of a cruelty case. He was brought in at 4 months of age and kept in the worst part of the shelter kennels. Why do we do this to victims of cruelty? He didn't get out very much. He didn't get walked by volunteers. He didn't get to spend time in a home. And he didn't get to play with other dogs. He just watched everybody around him yell. It was so loud in that wing. And that's what he learned to do. He was very aroused on leash. He was grabbing at sleeves, grabbing at leashes. And he was very reactive towards other dogs on leash. Why wouldn't he be? He had been doing that for, 8 months in the shelter. So I said, have you ever tried him with a real dog? Like, oh, heavens no, he's so terrible on leash. I'm like, well, we need to know. So I tried him with a fake dog, and he was appropriate with the fake dog. He sniffed the muzzle, sniffed under the belly, sniffed under the tail. Like, I'm feeling better about you. Do you have an opposite sex dog who has a good play history? So they brought out this little golden, and here's how the consent test went. So they were getting nervous at this point that he's being a little much, so I'm just going to pick up the leash, take him away, and watch. Okay, Golden did a shake off, so yeah, that was a little much. But what does she do next? Like, hey, that's my friend. So I would have been okay by the end of this session pulling his muzzle off. These guys were very nervous about letting dogs play. I do have a course on Shelter Behavior Hub on dog introductions if you want more than this little bit. We need to be comfortable with this. So I didn't hear anything after I left Australia, but I went back a couple years later and tracked down the kennel staff that I had bonded with the most. I'm like, what happened to that little piddle? And he went from being on the verge of being euthanized for extreme leash reactivity, grabbing at leashes, grabbing at people, to being adopted to a home with another dog. Like, this is the magic that can happen. So I started out my career in dog daycare, and we had a webcam on the ceiling, and Mom was watching from Silicon Valley, and I had to step in a lot, because boy, oh boy, if she sees Fluffy being humped, my boss is going to get a phone call. But going to shelter dog play groups, I've learned to chill out and let dogs handle it a little more. Like, not always, I'll do a consent test. But sometimes one dog is clearly not having a good time. That is when you step in. Sometimes play will tip. That dog I showed you who was humping, he would start by humping and then he'd start growling and it would tip into something closer to a fight. So with him, I did have to interrupt at the beginning of every hump. Most dogs work it out. If you've got that sort of escalating arousal where they're getting hotter and hotter and it's likely to tip into a fight, I'll step in. If they can't self-regulate, I am always going to protect puppies. I am always going to protect inexperienced dogs. And there's lots of places you can go to learn about play. My friend Lori Lawless runs Shelter Behavior Integrations. She did the dog play, the dog introductions webinar on my website as well. Lots of places you can go to learn how to let dogs play. But if you're not doing it, you are missing out on one of the best rehabilitation tools we have out there. So, like I said, it's a dog daycare. I had a whole timeout protocol. We interrupt all the humping because webcam. But often dogs can get out of it. So this is my pit bull, Theodore, who is very adept at wiggling out of a hump. So I rarely interrupted, except with that one who tipped from humping.
All day, day of the week. I said it is the day of the week.
That's a spayed female humping him.
It is the day of the week, y'all. All day,
The Doberman's always the fun police. But does he need my help? Did he need my help? No, he can wiggle out of it. He's fine. The Doberman will step in if it gets too... Everybody needs one Doberman. And sometimes you're not needed. So this was... this big black and white dog is one of my friend's pet sitting. And she asked if she could come over and let her play because she's driving her nuts. And I had just adopted a smaller dog. I said, well, we know she's good with Theodore, but we'll let her meet the smaller one too. And watch what Theodore does to save his sister. He's going to attempt to split them twice. He's going to go through the middle of them. And once he's too slow, once she doesn't notice, and the third time he goes and puts his shoulder into it, and she stops. She's not dangerous, she's just big, and he's concerned, and he was just a magic dog.
Oh, that was a quick turn.
Slow down, I just got little legs. She
Nice
didn't notice
split,
that.
Theodore.
She didn't notice that split. Watch this.
Oh!
Put his shoulder into the last one. I did not need to be chasing them down. He handled things. And when I've had dogs in for board and train, he has really been helpful. There is a whole protocol for do as I do, where you can teach dogs to do something. Like if I turn around, you turn around too. It's complicated. But this is a doorway barrier. This was the kitchen of a house I was renting at the time. And the puppy doesn't know that that's a barrier, but she notices that the other dogs are not going over it. So it was really easy to teach her that puppies are also not allowed in the kitchen, where I might drop a pot or a knife on them. Again, house training is super easy. Waiting at doors, crate training is easy if you send another dog in and out of the crate. And here's a little bit of mat training. Theodore heard me training this guy in the kitchen, and he's like, I know those words. So it was very cute.
See? Go to your bed. Good boys. You're a good boy. You're a good boy. Good boys.
Can be very helpful. So dogs are great for socializing puppies. I don't love having only puppies playing together. It kind of can turn into a Lord of the Flies situation, but having a savvy adult can really help if you're trying to socialize puppies with foster or in your shelter. And I'm always going to err on the side of safety with puppies. I don't want them to get overwhelmed. This was a dog who was hideous on leash, this little white floofy dog. Just any dog, any distance, on her hind legs, screaming. But Theodore told me she was cool, so I let them play together. And learning to play with other dogs was helpful with her leash reactivity. But I'm always going to protect my helper. I lost Theo a year ago, and I'm a little bit bereft without him because he had such a good bead on dogs. But this is a dog with a history of damage to other dogs, and we just wanted to see what he said about her. He is never going to play with a dog who's done that kind of damage, but here's some of the measures that I take to keep him safe. I've got a gate with an extra layer of fencing on it. She's got her dog on a long line, and I've also got Theo on a leash.
Hi, that's Theodore. What do you think? What do you think of him? I know, is he sexy? I know. What do you think of her, Theo? I am going to take my hands through them. I know, it's Theodore. I know, he's kind of intense. But he's not thinking it. There's nothing social there. We're gonna do this.
And that was one of the few dogs where Theo tapped out on it, and she ended up having a brain tumor. She started going after people as well a little while later. But you've got to protect your helpers. If they do have a rough session, you want to let them recover afterwards. That was one of the dogs I brought home from the shelter as my female helper here. She's working with a pretty intense guy who needed to be muzzled, so after that, I'm going to make sure she plays with another dog. The really big changes can be made with your fearful dogs. This is my feral dog, Laurel, who I've had a year and a half. I still cannot walk her on leash. I can't get her in the car. It's kind of like Groundhog Day every day with her. And humans alone, there is no amount of comfort she takes from humans, but she does take comfort from other dogs. This is not her. This is a different foster dog who was able to go in the car and wear a harness. And this is her first time at the vet.
Poppy, okay. Good girl, Lisa. So smart. What a brave girl. You can do it. You can do it. Come with Poppy. I know Poppy.
Poppy loves the
This
vet.
is the dog who lives there.
Good girl, Lisa. Yes, this is 6 months.
Well, Poppy said you were okay.
Poppy, show her how you greet people. This is what we do.
There's no way she would have come that close without Poppy telling her it was okay. This little guy was a very, very reactive little dog, and we did lots of field trips with Theodore.
Good. Head down. Good boy. Good boy. Try now.
Theodore's not yelling at people, so I guess I won't, but I really want to.
Good boy.
So sometimes I'll use FOMO to help dogs. So where we are with Laurel now is if I put a harness on her, she pancakes, but I will try to, I use FOMO. I'm trying to get her to put her head in a slip lead, because if she takes off, I can just drop it and it'll fall off her. So that is not a fearful dog, but she's doing the same exercise. Oh, look how brave. One of the big things that happened with Laurel once she got put on medication was she started sleeping in the bed with us. And I am a big fan on having dogs at least in the bedroom, if not in the bed, because you've got 8 hours of solid bonding time with them. And it was so delightful when she started sleeping in bed with the rest of the pack. I think this was one of the first times she jumped on the bed. Yay for better living through chemistry. So it can be hard to find helper dogs to work with reactivity. Sometimes a stuffed dog is where we start. That's that little fluffy dog again, and we definitely started with a stuffed dog with her. Sometimes if we teach dog training classes, we can have them all in one class together and use barriers. Sometimes we can get some help from the other shelter dogs, but I really advise anybody in the training business to get yourself a Theodore. If you have one solid helper dog, I still have 2 dogs who are very helpful. They're not as magical as he was, but it can be really great. I have been to shelters that only used stuffed dogs to test for dog-dog aggression, and that doesn't work with everything. Sometimes if you don't have a helper dog, or like that Pity where nobody knew anything about him, a first pass with a stuffed dog, he was appropriate with a shelter dog, or with a stuffed dog. So if they're appropriate, they tend to be appropriate with real dogs. But if they're fearful or aggressive in a normal population of dogs, it might be just that dog's really weird looking, it's got a hard stare, they're very stiff. So I take it a little less seriously. With fighting dogs, it's very accurate. If they go do a full layover grab shake of the stuffed dog, it's 83% correlation in the one study I helped with on that. But here's Theodore with the stuffed dog.
Theodore. So many friends. So many friends. What are you going to do, Theodore? So many friends.
He did that every time I've loaded up my stuffed dogs for I teach defensive handling with the stuffed dogs, and every time I loaded them up, he would try to make them play. So this is what a social dog will typically look like with a stuffed dog. I have found it's wise to have a human beside them and make it move a little bit so it's not just stiffly staring. I start with it sideways to the dog so they can see the profile.
Hi, Lisa. Look at the friend.
And I know this dog is dog friendly, so I'm just
My goodness.
doing a little puppetry with the stuffed dog. We're going to sniff each other's butts. I'm keeping my hand away from the dog's neck just in case he does attack. That's just a good. And then I want to see what he does if the dog rolls over. Sometimes dogs will get more aggressive then. So this was the first time we used a stuffed dog back at the ASPCA probably 20 years ago. Somebody donated some to us. And this was a dog who I believe was from a game bred background, and this is what they do. I've learned since then to keep a hand on the leash and keep the dog moving, so she doesn't really trigger until the dog's moving.
I'll grab this.
So that is not play. So I do think everybody who works in sheltering, everybody who trains dogs should have a helper dog. And I like to choose mine out of playgroups. Several of my dogs have been playgroup rock stars. I really want a dog with a flexible play style, not one who's a meatball all the time, but one who can bring the shy dogs out of their shell, or who are not going to escalate if things go badly. But you do need a dog who's resilient. I am very protective of my helper dogs, very, very protective of them. I don't just send them off with anybody. So now everybody wants a helper dog. You go to an ASPCA dogfighting bust and you pick the best one, is my advice. But if I'm going to adopt a shelter dog, I advise volunteering. The little scruffy dog at the bottom was a playgroup rock star. I was just kind of looking for a smaller dog, and she was awesome. I do like to choose them from a playgroup, but then I also like to foster to see what they're like in a home situation. I personally prefer adult dogs. Puppies can change as they get older. You might be able to find dogs through other sources. This was one of the dogs I adopted from Illinois Doberman Rescue. I fostered her, and she was perfect. Sometimes you can find them being rehomed from a home. And Fifi was just the best dog. She was 9 years old, and she just walked in the house like she'd always lived there and fit right in. That is called head measuring. Dobermans all do that. So this is Laurel. She was captured as a puppy by an animal control officer in Georgia, and she has always been distrustful of humans, like feral type behavior, even from 4 months of age. She did bite the animal control officer after being chased down on a four-wheeler, and any kind of touch, any kind of leash pressure, she panics and flips around. So this is the before video. I never get before video. I'm like, I'm going to torment this dog just so they can see how averse to touch she is. So I'd had her a couple weeks at that point, and even though I had cookies, even though I was sitting down, even though I was sideways to her, she just wants nothing to do with humans. And food alone is not enough. This is my friend. She's a dog trainer. She's doing the treat and retreat protocol where you throw the treats further away, and the dog recognizes they can move away if they want to. She is squatted down. She's not directly facing the dog. She's doing all the right things. How close is she going to get this dog by flinging food at her? That was a big hand movement, Cat. But add a couple other dogs. Watch Laurel. Look at her tail position. She believes the other dogs when she did not believe the human alone. So don't think you're going to solve all of this with food. So you can pair food with a stranger over and over and over, and you may make the food scary too. So this is my friend Nell visiting from Australia. I'm like, just be a normal person and try to feed her some food.
Where are you?
This is last week, so I've had this dog for 1.5 years at this point.
No.
And she's just avoiding. I don't do that very often because the food is, somebody holding food out is going to, we may lose food as a tool if I keep doing that. So she's a work in progress, but she loves the other dogs.
Fall is here, hear the yell, back to school, ring the bell, brand new shoes, walking blues, climb the fence, books and pens, I can tell that we are gonna be friends.
Can't imagine how she would do as an only dog. And she started getting naughty. It's the cutest thing ever. A good dog brings the glove back.
Correct that whip. Give the pass the slap. Step on the square. Break your mama's back. When a problem comes along, you must rip it.
Just thinks that's the funniest thing. So this is where we are now. She is doing all right with the leash. I can lead her a few steps. She has jumped in the car a few times with Poppy when it's off. One day I want to go for a walk in the forest with her, but we're going at her speed. She's a tough one, but thank goodness I have helpers. So this was a party I had. Look who's on the couch. It's a short snip, but look who's on the couch with her paws crossed. That's a new person to her, and she chose to sit right next to her. It's a dog trainer. She's not trying to reach for her. So here she is being naughty again.
Colors and promises, how to be brave, how can I love when I'm afraid to fall, but watching you stand alone, all of my doubt suddenly goes away somehow.
One day. So lots of places you can go to get help. Like I said, I've got courses on Shelter Behavior Hub. Shelter Behavior Integrations is Lori Lawless. She can come to your shelter and show you how to get dogs playing. Dogs Playing for Life has a whole bunch of seminars, webinars. Learn from people who know more than you do, and this is one of the most powerful things you can do for shelter dogs. So I'm going to end up with a little video by one of my students. And if this does not persuade you that dog play is the antidote for all the problems, almost all the problems we see in shelter dogs, I don't know what will.
I'd like to introduce you to my friend Sourdough. This was a dog who I was really struggling to connect with in the kennels. I performed 12 unique sessions over 4 days, and no matter what sort of kennel work I did, I couldn't seem to form a connection. So I gave him the antidote. Sourdough came to us through the seizure of a large group of shepherds on a single property, so I knew that his background at least predicted high sociability or social tolerance, and he blossomed right away. I got to watch the weight of the world melt off this dog's shoulders. But then something quite unexpected happened. It became clear to me that Sourdough had a really calming impact on the group. Within about 10 minutes of being in this yard of rough and rowdies, everybody just started to relax. So I brought him out another dog. This dog was deteriorating in her kennels and fading fast. She was lunging and snapping at our volunteer walkers. I knew that she'd never survive without a major intervention. And what I watched Sourdough do in a number of minutes was nothing short of miraculous. And in rehabilitating her, he became curious about me. Oof, that must have taken some courage. He still pretty well kept his distance. But he also started to select me for social support, even when other opportunities were available. He stood near me for the first time, without a threat display. For the rest of that day, he remained dutifully curious about me. And the next day in the kennels, I saw a major shift. The intensity and concern had reduced considerably. It was clear that my presence still produced a level of conflict in him. But for the first time, Sourdough was moving towards me. I offered him my leash, and he thought about it. It was in that day's playgroup that it happened. Sourdough selected me. He gave me his trust. He solicited affection and touch and all the affiliative behaviors. No better feeling in the world. Oof, that must have been a lot. And off he went. Now, the following day in the kennels, I saw a different dog. Mind you, this is 72 hours after the filming of the first video, and there's no conflict, no barking, no distance-seeking behaviors. He slid right into my leash, and off we went. He still wasn't super keen about being too close to me, but for the first time, we were moving together. We were working together as a team. And so I brought out another long-termer in our population who was so reactive to dogs on leash and behind barriers, even puppies 2 months and younger, created all kinds of agonistic behaviors towards them from her. What Sourdough was able to do with her was nothing short of a miracle. She now regularly plays with large groups of dogs. And this boy, visiting this sweet soul, is a highlight. We're the best of friends. He communicates his needs to me, and I'm able to meet some of them. And in so doing, I can meet my own. We help other dogs who struggle. We help them to develop connection. So, give him a chance is his message, I think. In the highly restrictive environments of the shelter, we can't afford to not leverage this resource to its fullest capacity. And once in a while, in unlocking a dog like Sourdough, we get to learn more about other dogs and gain optics into the type of support they need in a time frame that I don't believe we ever could do without them.
I don't know that that dog would have been adopted without this intervention. I don't know if you heard at the beginning, Leon said he had done 12 individual sessions in the kennel with no progress at all. So use this tool. Like Sourdough says, learn more about dog play, learn how to read, learn how to monitor, learn how these dogs can help one another in ways that we just can't help them. If you're not doing play groups, you're missing out on one of the best tools. So find your helpers. You've always got one. They might not look like your average golden retriever. They might look like Sourdough yelling in his kennel. And keep learning. My mentorship starts in May. You can come and learn on Shelter Behavior Hub. You can hire me individually. And I can refer you to people who can help out in person. So yeah, thank you. What questions do you have?
I wasn't here for the entire presentation, so I hope you didn't touch on this yet, but I wanted to know what your thoughts were on littermate syndrome, adopting two puppy siblings into the same home together.
Yeah, I'm a professional trainer, and I would personally never do it. I also have friends who have very social breeds, like sight hounds, who prefer to get two from the same litter. So if you held a gun to my head and said you have to take two litter mates, I would look for two that were very different, probably opposite sex, not both ball crazy or both people crazy, with dogs with different interests. I don't think, unlike with cats, where they should absolutely go home with a friend, I don't think that we should be adopting out litter mates if we can avoid it. I did it once in my years at the A, and I chose two very different puppies, and they did okay. So I wouldn't do it. It's 4 times as much work. What other questions? All right, hobble this way, and I'll hobble your way.
I got you. I got you over here.
Oh, this is the room with 2 mics. I'm doing all right.
So my question is on pair housing. We often see a lot of bonded pairs come to us. We have a shelter that was built for less than 50 dogs, and we oftentimes have over 100 in our care. We do not pair them. We will face them off in opposite rows of kennels to help them. But the fear is when there is no staff and there is no volunteers there, and with the exceptional level of chaos and noise, that they may turn on each other. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we need to get your capacity down for sure. Once you close those guillotine doors, you are you're not able to give them as much quality of life. I know, we're all struggling right now. I tend to choose the adolescents to pair house. If you've got two goofy adolescents, you do need to separate them for feeding. You can't be handing out high-value Kongs to them. But if you can take them out to the play yard together, if they are paired together, start doing it. And if you need to separate them at night when nobody's there, that is also safe. But if they're getting along really well, they might take some comfort from having somebody to curl up with. There is always a danger, but there is a danger. Once you close that guillotine door, those dogs are at great risk for behavioral deterioration because they can no longer have their kitchen and their bathroom separate, and that's a big stressor for shelter dogs. So try it, let me know how it goes. I have the reference for the studies in the presentation, which you're going to get a copy of. Any other questions? You're welcome to come and bug me in between as well.
Thank you again for another powerful presentation. I was blessed to sit in the other presentation, and it was totally different than this one. But the knowledge and the education you have allowed us to hear is just phenomenal. I know you don't hear thank you enough, but on behalf of all of us, thank you.
Well, that's good timing because we're out of time now anyways, but thank you for attending. Go let your dogs play. Let me know how it goes.